So thank you, Professor Gihan. And well, my name is Hakim Usoof, and I am the project coordinator for the BIT project this year. So myself and we have Shubhodhani who's sitting in front. We generally focus a lot on the forums and the LMS as well as the emails that you have sent us. The two of us handle most of it. So basically, the agenda, I think we are 15 minutes short, so we try to catch it up in the lunch break. And like the announcements Professor Gihan said, each session will have about 15 to 20 minutes of questions, right? So you can ask them by raising your hand, or you can pass a small sheet with a question, and we will answer the questions that we think are most important. If you have your tea token tickets, you can give them at the canteen and collect your morning tea and evening tea. And during the time you are collecting your morning tea, you will have to tell the canteen whether you want lunch or not, right? Because they will only take orders. And if you don't order during the morning tea session, you might not have lunch. Okay? And the outline to this particular session, what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce what today's seminar is aimed at. Right? So we've actually been through your comments when you registered for the seminar, and we've tried to address most of them. So we will introduce what the seminar is about. We'll talk about what the project is, and ultimately I'll talk about how to write the introduction chapter. Right? So we'll be covering this part in this particular session before tea. So this seminar is titled "How to Do Your Student Project." Right? And the reason we have a particular seminar, like you take 8 subjects a year, but we don't have seminars for each subject. But the project, we have a special seminar this year, and I think we have had it a few years ago as well. So why it is, like Professor Gihan said, we have found that this is one of the hardest hurdles to get over in your big degree, right? So generally, most of you all are used to studying texts and going to classes, writing exams and getting through, right? But the project is different because here you have to be a more independent person, right? You have to be more independent and you have to apply what you have learned, which is a harder thing to do, right? And you also have supervisors, right? Some of them are easy to get hold of, some of them are not so easy to get hold of, right? So you might not have guidance. So you have to do a lot of work, right? So maybe that's one of the reasons why the seminar has been, the project has been a tough hurdle to get over. And this seminar today is aimed at anyone who is doing the project, right? Or maybe we have a couple of supervisors and institute personnel as well. And also those who are aiming to do it maybe next year or year after, right? So this is going to help you or guide you on how to get through this, right? So what is the big individual project? Right? What is expected is 300 hours of work, right? So over the academic year, which is 30 weeks, 15 week semesters, you have to do 300 hours of work. So roughly that is 10 hours of work a week, right? What we noticed typically as students, as humans, you live till the last moment, right? that is one of the places where most of us fail, right? You have to do it from day one. Roughly, this year, we have about 990 or to register, to pay and register. Only 901 ultimately submitted their proposal. So that is in a few weeks, we had a drop of about 90 students. Right? So there is something wrong somewhere. You want to do it, but you don't organize yourself to do it. Right? So the first key thing in getting through this is organization. Right? If you think you can leave it to the last 2 months, I'm going to build some program and then write some report and get through it, you're not going to get through it. Right? You have to start working from day one. And if you do just 10 hours a week, 2 hours a day during weekdays, right? That's sufficient if you work 30 weeks to get you through this, right? So don't leave it till the last moment. It is not going to work, right? And last year, we had around 350 people who came to defend their thesis, right? And about 170 odd got through, right? So probably last year also maybe 800-900 registered, but only or less than half of them came to defend, right? So that is again, they haven't planned, right? They haven't organized themselves. So that is a skill. You not only need to complete your big degree and your big project, but that's a skill you need to do in your life, right? Or else every day you keep on putting things back and ultimately you are stressed, right? Ultimately when you go older you get diabetes and stress and pressure and all this, right? So organize your life, and this is a good opportunity for you all to organize your life right now, right? So this is 12 credits equivalent to 3 big degree courses, right? So you put in a lot of work for 3 courses that you normally do. So here, this project also you have to put in a lot of work, right? 1 month, 2 months is not going to get you anywhere, okay? And the other thing is, this is where you apply what you have learned, right? And you get an opportunity to prove your innovativeness, independence, your originality, and your planning and undertaking large projects, ability to do that. It also prepares you to deal with real world problems and professionally document your work. Why is this important? Can I see a hands up of how many of you all are doing jobs? Okay. Quite a lot of you. How many of you all hope to do this big degree, go for a better job, or get a salary raise, or a promotion or something? Can I see a hands up? Okay. Lots of you, right? So now this is important, because lots of people, right, can take courses, write an exam and get through, right? But there are very few who can really apply what they have learned and show their skills, right? So if you go for a job interview or a promotion interview, what you can take with you is your documentation of your project, right? And that is proof that you can do something, right? Just saying a set of certificates, I sat for these exams and got through, doesn't tell a lot. But if you show, I have done this, I have written my project dissertation really well, I have gone through these steps, and I have done a really good project, that means I can do something, right? That carries weight for you all to demand a better job, a better pay, or a promotion, right? So that is why the project is important, not just to get through your BID. Right? This is an opportunity to show what you can really do. So basically, the aim of this seminar, it has a couple of aims, is to guide students in different phases of the project. Right? I will start with the introduction, and like the agenda goes, there will be people who will talk about the analysis phase, the design, implementation, evaluation and testing, and ultimately how to do your thesis, and the most important thing, how you are going to get assessed. That's what we all worry about, right? And we have had experience with dealing a lot of with students in their project evaluation. So we have identified certain pitfalls as well as common mistakes you'll make. So we'll try to mention them so that you don't make the same mistake. And how to document your work, and ultimately provide a better understanding of what we are looking for, right? How we are going to assess you so that you can actually prepare for it, right? So we'll now talk about the project. Maybe some of you have already started, some of you are hoping to do it next year, right? So 2013, 2014 academic year. So what should your project be, right? Generally, the way we look at it, your project should be a developmental project with a clear set of objectives and clear scope, right? Most people don't have an objective or a scope. When they write a dissertation, they write some objective and some scope, right? But initially, when you start a project, there should be some objective, right? And I'll give you some examples of objectives and scopes. Because a lot of dissertations that I've been through, I've seen that a lot of people make mistakes in defining what objectives are and what scopes are, right? So this should be a developmental project that you can show that you're doing some structured, you have a structured way of doing a particular project, and you can achieve the objective and you can achieve the scope. And then we talk about the client, right? So in general terms, we need a client, because a client has requirements. It may be an individual, it may be an institution, right, or a group. So we need a client, right? And basically, they will state their requirements, right? Because without requirements, you can't do a project, right? And there are research projects that people do, but I don't think they apply for the bid, right? So here, these are developmental projects that you have to do. So you have to have a client who will mention, this is my requirements, you will do the analysis, you will do a design, you will do the implementation, you will test the system, and ultimately, the client will certify your system whether the client's objectives were achieved and whether you have done all that you have mentioned in your scope, right? Now the danger here is the clients might expect more than what you can deliver. You have 2 semesters, 30 weeks to do a project, right? So be careful of clients who might want you to deliver more than what you can do. Right? Maybe you can do it after your degree or something as a like appreciation to the clients offering you a project, right? But be careful of taking a scope which is plausible within 30 weeks, right? And the other thing is, ultimately, the examination board, right, is the one who decides whether your scope is sufficient and whether you have done enough. Not the client, right? The client has to certify, but ultimately it's the examination board that is going to decide, right? So if the client says, oh, this is sufficient for me, so he gives you a very small scope, right? And you come and say, this is all what the client wanted. And the exam board says, no, this is not enough, right? Ultimately, you are not going to pass your project, right? So that is also something you need to consider. So your scope, right, should be sufficient for 30 weeks of work, that is 300 hours, right? And then ultimately, who's your supervisor, right? So some of you already have supervisors, some of you are hoping to get the couple next year. They are people with experience, right? They should be qualified, they should have a degree, right? And also they should be qualified in IT project supervision, or they should have some experience in working in IT projects, right? So that they can guide you. If they don't have any experience, they can't guide you through it, right? So it is important that they can guide you. So choose your supervisor wisely and also have contact with them. Some people need the supervisor just to get a signature for submitting the progress report or the supervisor agreement form or ultimately the dissertation. That is not going to help you. Use your supervisors. They might be busy, right? But go bother them. Right? Don't let them be. Go trouble them. Say, I want half an hour to talk about my project today or tomorrow or next week. Right? I am stuck. I need your help. Go talk to your supervisors. Right? They have agreed to supervise. So use that agreement and get the best out of them, right? So that you can be guided throughout the project and not at the beginning and then ultimately at the end or when you sign your progress reports. So now we move on to what the introduction chapter is about, what is expected there, right? This is the general set of points that are required. Introduction, by definition, is where you introduce something, right? It is not only your project, it is the dissertation and what you have been doing. So it gives you not all the details, but some details, so that you know what you're talking about. Right? So that the exam board who goes through your dissertation knows what you are going to talk about in the rest of the dissertation and when you defend your project. So the first thing is you have to introduce your client. What is their core business? Who are they? What do they do? And these slides and maybe even this talk will be posted on the LMS so that you can actually go through them. So the client, you have to first describe your client and their core business. What do they do? Then you have to define what the problem is. Right? If there is no problem to solve, then there is no problem to solve. You can't create a problem. Right? So you have to define or give a definition of the problem that your project aims to solve. Right? And next, why you want to do this project? And a lot of people forget the real reason they are doing this project. To get through the PID, and they don't mention it in their dissertation. Right? But if I were writing my dissertation, I will write as a requirement for getting through the PID. Right? You can have personal requirements or motivations. Right? So, you can write where I get to apply my knowledge, right, and prove that I can do a certain project. Right? So that is a motivation. And then you can have other motivations that the client you want to solve this problem. Some people do school management systems for their own school. Right? Some people design systems for friends. Right? Or friends of friends. You can have different motivations. Right? So motivation is also important. And why I am mentioning these points is because this is what we look at in your evaluation of the thesis. These are points you look at. So you need to know what they are meaning. So I am just mentioning this, and then key objectives, right, or the main objectives of the project, right? What will the project achieve? Right? What will the project achieve? And then the scope, what is included and what is not. What are the limitations? You can't have everything within 300 hours of work. Right? So you have limitations, what you are going to do. So this we evaluate to see whether you have done enough or not. So this is something I just cooked up, not taken from anywhere. Right? The school management system. As an example, what is the objective? Streamlining the management of the school. That is an objective. What is your project going to achieve? Right? Streamlining the management of the school. What is the scope? Implementation of the timetable scheduling module. Student examination, report card generation, and some management reports. Right? That is the scope. Right? Maybe you can have a teacher allocation. Right? But if you are not mentioning that in your scope, that means you are not doing it. That's a limitation. This is what you are going to do. Now, I am not saying this is sufficient. Right? This is not sufficient. I am just giving you an example. Right? So, timetable allocation, staff allocation systems, right? Examination and report management, okay? Generating some management reports, maybe handling something like school fees or school donations. Right? You can have all of those. But you have to mention clearly what your scope is, what exactly you are going to do and what exactly you are not going to do. Okay? And what we hope to do in the future, and someone else will talk about future work. Right? So this is a clear definition or a clear differentiation with what an objective is and what a scope is. Right? And this is another one, a cab management system or a taxi management system. An objective is to improve the satisfaction, customer satisfaction through efficient vehicle scheduling. Right? So that customers don't have to wait for long for a taxi or something. That's an objective. What are you going to do with your scope? What are you going to give? That is, develop an intelligent data to schedule cabs according to time and route and provide some management reports. That's a scope. So you see there's a clear difference between an objective and a scope. And make sure that you don't make this mistake where people put scope as objectives and objectives as scope. Right? There's a clear difference. And lots of people find it really hard to identify the two differences. Next, in the last part of your introduction chapter, you have to give an outline. Right? Like I told you, the introduction chapter introduces the project, but it also introduces the entire dissertation. Right? So you have to give an outline of the rest of the chapter in the dissertation, and generally they are analysis, design, implementation, testing and evaluation, and conclusion. So that is what your introduction chapter is all about. Introduce your project, your objectives, your scope, your motivation, introduce the problem initially and the client, and ultimately introduce your dissertation to the reader. Because by the end of the introduction chapter, you know, or the person who is reading the chapter knows roughly what this person is going to talk about. And then we can move on to more serious stuff in the different chapters or phases in the dissertation. So that's about it, and I think we are on time. If you have any questions, you can ask, or you can send small notes. I can try to answer that. Anyone with questions? It's an audience of your own peers, so don't be shy. We have this thing in Sri Lanka where people don't like to ask questions in public. There are no stupid questions, right? Every question is worth something. Okay? So you can ask questions. It's an audience of your peers. So if you're shy, you can write a little piece of paper and pass it forward. We try to answer. Yes, sir. Good morning.
Is there any some way of writing a plan?
Writing a plan?
Is there a defined way that you work on the plan?
Finding a client. There is no defined way of finding a client, because one issue is we can't find your clients, right? Because we have a lot of students. But finding clients is up to you. So one way you can do is you can try with your personal contacts, your family, your friends, and see whether there is someone who requires a project or has some requirement that you can address with a project. So that is the only way we can offer to find a client, or your workplace or your old school, right? So maybe there are places that you can just look around, ask around, and it's generally with personal connections that people find clients and projects.
So just to add to that, easiest is the workplace, but try doing some project too, like going one place or something like that. If your father is running a business, and then you do that, maybe one easy way of doing it, but then you may not experience the real environment, business environment, to try to do within the same setup. This is the place of space and
I am a director institution. Previously, one of my students, he has done the project for the telecom television play. Actually, this project is telecom task complete. At the end of the project, we missed the project because the project weight is not enough. My request is the 20% students also submit the indirect report also. Usually try to give some of the idea this project is not enough. Actually, he is satisfied the client requirement, but he missed the project. The weight is not enough. Therefore, my request, please give some initially after we have submitted the plan or something. If your project is not enough or the weight is not enough, it's a very helpful to our students.
agree that some feedback is useful. We did try to give some feedback at the beginning, for 2 years I think. But it was not practical. The students were complaining, we are relaying the response, they can't start to work. As a result, the NDMP is not giving feedback. It's not practical when high number of people ask, and we have to change that because we do this as our exercise is very honest, and we have a kind of
I'll just answer a few of the questions that have come on Chits first. What are the requirements of an individual client should meet, right? What are the requirements a client should meet? Well, the requirements is basically that the client has a problem that is worth while solving and has a scope which is large enough, right? So the client can basically be anyone except yourself, right? The client can be anyone, an individual or an organization, but they should have a sufficient set of requirements and a sufficient scope that a project can solve and will be considered as sufficient by the exam board. And there's another one. In scope, I think it is a brief description of functional requirements. Is it correct? Well, you can put it in that way. A scope can be a set of functional requirements that you're going to deliver, right? But it's written not exactly in the way you would write a functional requirement, right? It is what you're going to give. Okay, what features you are going to give, right? So it is, in one way, it is a different or a description of the functional requirements, right? But you don't, the way you write it is a little bit different. And we have a suggestion. It would be great if supervisors could be from the UCSC. We have limited staff, so I don't think it's plausible or feasible, right, for UCSC staff to be your supervisors, right? With the amount of internal students and also your work, the bit work that we handle, it is quite impossible for UCSC staff to be your supervisors, right? We would love to, but it's practically impossible. There was someone who wanted to ask a question, yes. Your question regarding yeah.
There is a way from there is a criteria, just in the criteria to do the project from the ultimate base. There are each introduction. There is
there is a session on evaluation of your projects. So we will talk about that there. You can raise the question there, and we will talk about that in that particular place. What if the client business collapses? I've been getting that question. Can I change the client, right? And can I do the same project? You can't. The problem is different clients have different requirements. Right? The client is the one who specifies the requirement. So if the client changes, of course you have to change your project. If it happens early, you are lucky. Right? You can actually change your project. If it happens at a later stage, right, of your project, then it's still okay because maybe the client collapses, but someone, your contact in the client is still there. Right? So you have done the project according to the original requirements of the client. That's okay. Right? And then you can present that work because you have already done it. If it happens in the middle, it's a challenge that you have to actually do double the work in the second half, because if your client is no more, right, and you need to still do the project, then you actually need to work double time, right, and find a new client, new requirements, new scope, and then do a project. So you'll have to put a lot of hours in. Okay.
So just to add to that, maybe the time is a similar requirement, generally okay, but not the different requirements. Because part of it is like you are starting 2 months late, and then you don't have that 300 hours to complete.
Explain more how to clearly differentiate the problem and the objectives. A problem, right, would be something like there could be, like, for example, in a school management system, you have a delay in issuing examination marks, right, or the reports. Parents don't have access to students' attendance, right? Those are problems, right? Your objective will be to improve that situation, right? In a sense, if I write an objective for that, it would be something like provide more accurate information to parents. That would be your objective, right? Accurate and more, provide information more efficiently to parents. That would be the objective, right? But the problem would be that the parents don't have access to the students' attendance or timely manner in their marks, right? Or their performance, how they have achieved previously and how they are doing now, right? So the objective would be to improve or make the efficiency in providing information to parents about students' performance and attendance, right?
Also, just want to add to that, also look at whether IT can solve the problem. All problems IT may not help to solve and improve. For example, in solve the answer of Q, then you can try to do certain additional tasks. So you need to see what can IT solution help, and then only you come up with a solution, but the IT will be helping that problem.
There's a question, can we use the same introduction, analysis and design of the interim report which we submit before 30th April for the dissertation? That is the main aim, right? The main aim is by this time you should have done a lot of your work, at least to the design part, right? That is why you have an interim report, okay? So that is basically you're going to write part of your dissertation, right? So it is two ways. One is you're going to do some writing so that you don't leave the writing to the end, right? And the other one is to force you to reach this particular stage of finishing your design of your project, right? And next will be implementation, okay? So basically, if you do this now, you can make some modifications in the future when you submit your final dissertation, right? But you have, this is the same chapters that will go on to your final dissertation.
Sir, I have a question. Before we progress in the beginning, we actually meet the concept then what we, on the diagram. So, one suggestion is, can we show the supervisor at the PEB, one of the supervisors, so that we can make a survey so that we can help us to really and fix the diagram. Because how much we work, or we work for 300 hours, but at the end of the day, we need to clear the project. There's a chance of failing the project.
So, is it to do with the scope, whether it is sufficient or not?
Yes, because You said now out of 900, 300 students may be ready for the project.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a limitation. So 300, I think we can just spend 15 minutes to go to
the problem is we don't know.
Comments, I think it could be very useful.
Yeah, the problem is we don't know who that 300 out of the 900 is at the beginning.
You can ask,
No, because some people, they come right to they submit all the progress reports, the interim report and everything, but ultimately they don't come for the evaluation. So we actually, out of the 900 something or 900 or close to 1,000 students who register,
and people interested can answer.
it might be all, or maybe it might be 250 or something.
You have to do something.
The challenge is, that is why we have a supervisor who has already qualifications. Yeah, that's
it's okay, sir. So
yeah, that's the reason why we have a supervisor who has qualifications and also experience. Because the supervisor is ultimately the person who's closest to the student and who can judge whether this scope is worth 300 hours or not. Right? Because the problem is, like Professor Gihan said, if we try to give feedback whether this is sufficient scope or not, right? The problem is there is another delay. Because initially we have to give feedback for 900 students, who are the number who submit their project proposals.
One answer, because in the middle of the project, if something and the student comes with something, if the student doesn't have anything to show, so he or she will not come.
You mean at the interim report stage?
Yes, right.
Well, then I don't know how many submit the interim report. I don't have statistics on that. So anyway, the problem we face is delays when we have to deal with large numbers and the lack of staff here, because we have limited resources. So that is why we mainly bank.
You can go to the book and say, you develop this now, or this is your weakness, or that would be a great help.
Maybe we can talk about that with the director and see how that goes. I think time is up. We have a few, we have a few questions that haven't been answered. We'll, the interim report. Number of pages. Well, the pages, we actually don't have an exact number, but it should be sufficient, maybe 5 or 6 pages, right, minimum. That is enough to introduce your project, right, and the project dissertation. Yeah, but it shouldn't be a large chapter, because the introduction is basically an introduction to the project and the dissertation, right? So it's just an introduction. It doesn't have a lot of explanation to do, right? So 4 or 5 pages minimum, that would be what an introduction chapter would be. And the rest of the questions that we have, we will answer them in the forum. So do visit the forum, and if you have any more questions, you can post them there. We'll try to answer. Yes.
So this is in introduction. Introduction, we have to face outline.
Yes.
Outline with all the phases.
Yes.
But for interim report, do we have to write all the phases or only for the given phases?
You can limit it to
Design.
up to the design, because that is where you explain what the chapters are about. Right?
So then we don't have to mention all 5, right? We can mention only 3.
If it's possible, you can mention, but you don't have to, because you have done only up to the the design chapter. So you can leave it at the design.
Thanks.
So